Hello everyone, myself Kiran Joshi. I welcome you all in Class 9 History. I am here with the presentation of History Chapter 1, the French Revolution. Here I will be presenting the first part of this chapter. First of all, let's have a look of France's location in the world map. It is in the Europe continent. We can have a closer look of France in the map of Europe. Its neighboring countries are United Kingdom, Belgium, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, Spain, etc. So this is about the location of France. Now comes the second word of the title of the chapter, revolution. You must have heard the word revolution, which means one of the two motions of the earth, but here the meaning is different. It means a violent attempt by many people to end the rule of the King of France. This violent attempt took place on 14 July 1789 in Paris, when the King of France, Louis XVI, ordered his troops to enter the city of Paris. There were rumors that the king had ordered the troops to open fire on the citizens. The angered people gathered in front of the town hall and broke into many government buildings. Finally, they stormed the fortress prison, the Bastille. The Bastille was hated by people as it was a symbol of king's power. In the struggle, the commander of Bastille was killed, and the prisoners, who were 7 in number at that point of time, were released. This was the beginning of a chain of events that eventually led to the execution of the King of France. Now the question that comes in our mind is, why were the people against the king? Why did they hate the king so much? To get the answers of such questions, we need to learn about the French society at that time, that is, late 18th century. I am sure many of you must have enjoyed the Bourbon Biscuits. No, I am not advertising the biscuit. In fact, I mentioned Bourbon because Louis XVI belonged to Bourbon family. He became the king in 1774. When he was 20 years of age, he was married to the Austrian princess Marie Antoinette. When Louis XVI ascended the throne, he found an empty treasury. Treasury means a place where the money of the government is kept. Now the question arises, why was the treasury empty? The following points can help you understand this. The first point is long years of wars. France had several armed conflicts during the reign of the King Louis XIV between 1661 and 1715. These long wars caused France a lot of war expenditure. Second point is independence of 13 American colonies. France helped the 13 American colonies to gain independence from their common enemy, Britain. This too added to the drainage of financial resources of France. The third reason for the empty treasury could be the maintenance of the Palace of Versailles. The cost of maintaining an extravagant court of the immense Palace of Versailles was too high. Fourth point is debt. In such circumstances, the French government had to take loan at a very high rate of interest, that is 10% of interest, due to which the French government had to spend most of its budget on interest payments alone. Fifth point is regular expenses. Besides the other expenditure which were mentioned earlier, there were regular expenses too, such as the cost of maintaining an army, the court, running government offices, universities, etc. Further, the question arises, what was done to overcome the situation or to improve the financial condition of the treasury? The state or the government was left with the only way, that is, to increase the taxes. If I ask you the question, who pays the tax in our country? I am sure your answer would be the citizens or the people of the country. So, the taxes were increased in France, but the taxpayers in France at that time were not all the people of the country. What does it mean? Who was supposed to pay the taxes and who were exempted? To understand this, we need to see the structure of the French society or the old regime. The French society or the old regime was divided into 3 estates. Here is the figure that shows the organization of the system of estates in France. As you can see, the first estate was clergy. It consisted of the people who performed special functions in the church, for example, priests, etc. The second estate was nobility. The members of this estate were nobles, dukes, the king and the queen, princes of royal blood, counts, knights, aristocrats, etc. The first estate and the second estate enjoyed many privileges or advantages. The very important one was that they were exempted from paying taxes to the state. The third estate comprised of big businessmen, merchants, court officials, lawyers, peasants, artisans, craftsmen, shopkeepers, landless laborers, servants, etc. The third estate had to pay to the state and to clergy and nobility too in different ways, such as direct taxes, which were called taille, indirect taxes, which were on articles of daily consumption. Third, taxes to churches, which were called tithes. Fourth, feudal dues to noble. In this regard, few more things are important to mention here. The first, most of the members of third estate were peasants, small farmers, who were very poor. And a very few people were big businessmen, lawyers, etc. Second, out of the total population of France, 90% were peasants. Third, amongst all the peasants, very few owned land to cultivate. Fourth, almost 60% of the land was owned by churches, that is clergy, nobles, that is nobility, and few rich members of third estate. In this way, all the burden of financial activities of the state or the government through taxes was borne by the third estate alone. On one hand, the people of France were burdened with the increasing taxes. On the other hand, there was struggle to survive. This was because the population of France rose from about 23 million in 1715 to 28 million in 1789. This led to a rapid increase in the demand for food grains. However, the production of grains could not keep pace with the demand. Things became worse when drought or hail reduced the harvest. So the price of bread, which was the staple diet of the majority of people, rose rapidly. Most workers were employed as laborers in workshops whose owner fixed their wages. But wages did not keep pace with the rise in price. So the gap between the poor and the rich widened. This led to a subsistence crisis, something that occurred frequently in France during the old regime. Meanwhile, new social groups emerged in the French society that envisaged an end of privileges. Initially, in revolts against increasing taxes and food scarcity, the peasants and workers lacked means and programs to bring about the changes in the social and economic order. In 18th century, some social groups emerged within the third estate, which was termed as which were termed as middle class. They included merchants, manufacturers, lawyers, administrative officials, etc. They were educated and believed that privileges should not be on the basis of birth but on a person's merit. Some philosophers, such as John Locke and Jean Jacques Rousseau, put forward the ideas of a society based on freedom and equal laws and opportunity for all. Now let's have a look on some philosophers and their ideas at that time. John Locke, in his two treatises of government, refutes the absolute right and power of the monarch. Rousseau proposed the idea of government based on a social contract between people and their representatives. Montesquieu, in the spirit of laws, proposed the division of power within government between legislative, executive, and judiciary. This model was applied in USA after the independence of 13 colonies from Britain. In class 8, you have learnt that we also follow this model in our country. So these ideas spread through discussion in salon, coffee houses, etc. People read books and newspapers aloud in groups for those people who were illiterate, so that they could be aware of such ideas. When people learnt about the plan of Louis XVI of imposing further taxes, they grew angry and protested against the system of privileges. This is all for this part of the chapter. We'll meet again in the second part of the chapter in next presentation. By the time, try to solve the following questions. First, what were the reasons behind the empty treasury of France during the late 18th century? Second, what was the structure of the French society before French Revolution? Or describe the division of French society during old regime. Third, what were the reasons for the subsistence crisis? Fourth, explain the role of philosophers in the French Revolution. That's all for this presentation. Hope you liked this presentation and this presentation was helpful for you. Thank you.